Hello, welcome to Coffee and Card at Home. So this week is week 3 using the Peaceful Deer stamp set and the coordinating deer punch, and we're using both of those things this week, and this is the card that we are making. So first of all, you're going to need a C6 card base, which is in Crumb Cake. You could use any other colours actually, so Night of Navy would probably look lovely for this one as well, but something dark that's going to contrast with our white ink that we're going to use in a second. So I'm going to get my background done first of all, and I'm using the large tree and this set of 3 trees here to create my forest at the bottom, and I'm using 2 shades of brown. So I've got Early Espresso and Crumb Cake. So I'm going to start with the Early Espresso with my largest tree, and I'm just going to stamp them so that they come to about halfway on the card. Obviously we want to make them look quite natural and random and have some trees that are slightly bigger than others. I'm just going to swap sides with my ink a minute. And I didn't like quite how dark the Early Espresso came out, so I've just stamped off before I stamp it. I'm just going to space them a little bit apart. Also some a bit higher up. Don't worry if you get things like that happen, because you can overlap your trees. So the thing that we are after with this is we're trying to create an effect really, so don't worry if some of your trees don't come out perfectly. And obviously trees are natural too, so they wouldn't all look absolutely perfect and identical. So then we're going to use the Crumb Cake with the same tree stamp again, and we are going to fill in some of these gaps. But I'm going to stamp once and then I'm going to stamp again, so I get that slightly lighter colour. It makes it look like I've got some trees in the background. Okay. And then we're going to go back to the Early Espresso, and for this I am going to use full strength ink because I want these to look more in the foreground, and this is with my smaller tree now, and I'm just going to stamp along the bottom really. And again I'm stamping twice just to get slightly different shades of colour. If you have got any bits that you really don't like, then now is a good time to try and cover over. There we go. You can really vary it. Make it a bit more interesting. So the next step is we are going to put our snowflakes on, and there's a lovely snowflake and sort of star stamp here, and I love doing snowflakes on Christmas cards when I've got a nice dark background and putting white on with the Whisper white pigment ink. So we're just going to stamp our snowflakes randomly. I'm turning my stamp so that I can fit them together as well. Turn that one that way, and it just varies the look as well, and you can also make them go over your trees a little bit if you want to. So that's my background done. I'm going to do some finishing bits on it in a second, but I'm just going to leave it to dry because the pigment ink takes a bit longer to dry. Now we're going to get our sentiment and our deer done. So I've got a strip of card which measures about 1.5 centimeters. It's not very wide. I'm just going to use one of the very small sentiments, and I'm going to do that in real red. And I'm just going to come away slightly from the edge of the card so that I can tuck that behind my deer. And then you can choose what colour you want to do your deer, but I decided to go for Old Olive, and I've just got a scrap of card which I'm using for my deer, and I'm using the deer from the set which has the writing on it which says "Oh, what fun." Just make sure it's well inked. And then we're just going to use the punch to punch that out. See, if you're struggling with getting that so that you can hold it in the punch, you can do my little tip that I've told you about before, which is to get a post-it note. So I'm just going to put a post-it note on there so it helps me to hold it in the punch easier. So it's a bit of a fiddly punch to line up exactly straight, because you've got to keep an eye on the legs but also on the head, and you've got it right. Punch it out, and you will also be left with the antlers, which we're going to sort out to be able to stick onto the top. So I'm just going to put my deer to the side for a second. We're going to take my antlers, and we want them so that they point that way. So you've got a little bit that indents in the middle. And I'm just going to colour that in. So I'm just using the early Espresso marker pen, but you could use whatever you've got, blends pens, or even just use a blender pen with some ink. Or if you really don't want to colour it in, you could use some brown card and just punch it out separately. So I'm going to bring my main card back, and I'm going to get that assembled now. So first of all, I'm just going to trim down my sentiment. So I'm just going to cut about 1 centimetre away from the end. And then I'm going to cut a little slit right in the middle of the end, and then go from the corner to the top of that slit, and then from the corner to the top of that slit to create my flagged end on my card. And then I'm going to stick that on, and that's going to go on with dimensionals. So that's going to go just above my trees and slightly to the side. Try and use the grid lines at the sides to help you to line it up if you can. And then I'm going to put a mini dimensional on the deer's head. because their head isn't particularly big. Oops. And then I'm going to put a standard size dimensional on the front of his body. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of Tombow on his bottom, because that bit is going to sit on top of the sentiment, which is already raised up. So I'm just going to pop that on there. And then we're just going to put some little dabs of glue onto the back of the antlers. And because they're a little bit fiddly, I'm just going to use some tweezers to try and lift them up. Oh, told you they're a bit fiddly. And I'm just going to tuck those behind his head. And then we're going to use the thin end of the marker pen just to give an eye. His eye disappeared when we were stamping. And then I'm just using a embellishment, which is a retired one now from last year, but it's kind of like a flat gemstone, which works quite nicely for his nose, because of course he has to be Rudolph. So the only thing that I've got left to do now is just to give it a bit of sparkle. Now there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could use glitter, or you could use crystal effects or anything like that. I thought the easiest way for me was to use a bit of wink of Stella. So I'm just going to dab onto each of the bits on the snowflake. Excuse me. And it will just give a very subtle, shimmery look to it. And obviously you only have to do the ones that you can see. And then also I'm just going to put some on my trees. So I'm just doing gentle strokes down the edges of the big trees. You don't have to be too precise. So it almost looks like the snow has just caught the edges. And then just a little bit on some of my smaller trees as well. Those are more like a wiggle on those. But you're just trying to create a bit of a sparkle on there. And I think that is it. So if I bring back one of my others, and see, depending on how you create your forest, they're going to all look ever so slightly different, but I think anyone would enjoy receiving one of those at Christmas time. So just a quick recap, we used a C6 card base in Crumb Cake, and we used a 1.5 centimetre strip of basic white for our sentiment, and then a scrap of basic white for our deer. Inks we've used are early Espresso, Crumb Cake, Pigment white ink, and Old Olive and Real Red. And then just to finish off, we have used Tombow, both sizes of dimensionals, and a bit of wink of Stella. So quite simple to make. You could probably get quite a few of these done in one go if you decided to do a bit of batch making. But I hope you'll have a go. And if you need any help with anything, then obviously please let me know. If you'd like to purchase any of the things that I've used in the card, then again let me know and I can add that onto an order for you. Or you can go to stampinup.uk and search for Claire Humphreys as your demonstrator. So thanks for joining me today. Next week is the last week using the Peaceful Dear stamp set, and also our last coffee and card for 2022. Things are going to be a little bit different from next year, so watch out for more news on that soon. Have a great week and I will see you next week. Bye.